miles from the target.
Nuclear missiles with defective guidance systems aren't tomorrow's problem. This is a security threat as we speak, built right into what has been touted as one of our most trusted weapons systems. What went wrong? Well, a major 2020 investigation reveals some of the answers, and what may really astound you in Tom Jarrell's report is that in this instance, the way we make some of our nuclear weapons seems almost amateurish.
For as long as aircraft have been used in the defense of nations, strategic planners have tried to develop a smart weapon, one that could guide itself to a target. After a well-publicized crash program in the 1970s, the U.S. unveiled it, the cruise missile, one of the smartest weapons in the U.S. arsenal. The 20-foot-long cruise is a nuclear-armed, pilotless plane, flying low and slow to avoid enemy radar.
Countdown's beginning. 5.
Theoretically, you can tell it where to go, program in a map, and it will find its own way.
Missile away indications.
The cruise missile can change direction to correct course or avoid an obstacle. And in early tests in the late 1970s, the cruise missile was given an A for accuracy.
2, 1,
Cruise missiles can be launched from the ground and from ships at sea. Our story is about the air-launched cruise missiles, deployed on strategic bombers on patrol 24 hours a day.
Our whole defenses depend upon accuracy and reliability of these weapons. Without air-launched cruise missiles, our whole one leg of the triad, the air leg of the triad, the bomber leg of the triad, would be in deep, deep question.
Boeing Corporation is the prime contractor for the air-launched cruise missile. They assemble components made by at least 28 subcontractors, including the Northrop Corporation, which is the subject of our investigation. Northrop, with its corporate headquarters in Los Angeles, is one of the nation's biggest defense contractors, with huge contracts to work on well-known projects like the controversial stealth bomber. They have tens of thousands of employees nationwide, but this report involves only a few, less than 50, in one small facility located east of Los Angeles. Small, yes, but their work was crucial, involving the guidance system on the nuclear-tipped air-launched cruise missile. At this isolated plant in Pomona, Northrop employees assemble flight data transmitters for all of the air-launched cruise missiles, more than 1,700 of them. The flight data transmitter, or FDT, is a small sealed box, 5 by 3 inches, weighing about 2 pounds, packed with gyroscopes, circuit boards, and other electronic gear. The flight data transmitter goes in the front of the missile with the rest of the guidance system. It's the brain of the cruise missile, fine-tuning the course set by the autopilot. If the FDT fails, the missile drifts off course, carrying its 200-kiloton nuclear warhead out of control. Precise work on this component is so crucial, the Air Force requires stringent testing to military standards. The purpose is to make sure that the gyros and circuit boards in the FDT are absolutely reliable under a variety of extreme conditions. From the time the air-launched cruise missile went into production in 1981, the Pomona plant was under pressure to meet monthly quotas. Boeing was determined to produce the missiles ahead of schedule, and they did. But former Northrop employees charged the way they met the deadlines was by taking shortcuts. Until they finally blew the whistle, no one had noticed. Now Congress, the Air Force, and the Department of Justice are conducting separate inquiries, trying to determine what happened and how much damage has been done. What we've learned over the past year in our investigation will not reassure you. To begin with, investigators have found so many problems with the flight data transmitters in the air-launched cruise missiles, they don't know which ones will work and which ones won't. The problems begin with charges of fraud in the basic testing required for every FDT. Problem number 1, cheating to meet technical standards. Leo Barajas was a test engineer on the flight data transmitter. Were you ever involved in the falsification of test of data that went to indicate some of these parts were working when they weren't?
Yes, sometimes when parts would fail. They just tell me to go ahead and get good recordings from previous tests and rip off the identification on them on top of the tape. It was really easy to do, just ripping them off and re-identify it, and that way nobody would ever know that there was ever a failure.
So that was deliberate falsification of the test?
Yes.
Barajas showed us how it was done. The results of successful tests were attached to reports on equipment which had failed. It was a simple cut-and-paste fraud. Another employee says to make this scam work, they rigged up extra machines to make spare copies of successful test results. Even though the falsification would have been easily detectable, Barajas says it was done at least 100 times and was never caught.
You have a failure there.
Okay, so that would be a failure.
And that's not all. The federal government has identified the serial numbers of over 600 flight data transmitters they allege were improperly tested, failed testing, or weren't tested at all in violation of military standards. How could such an apparent wide-scale fraud go on and not be caught? Because of problem number 2, bypassing the inspectors. Besides testing, each unit had to be individually inspected by a certified technician before it was packed and shipped to Boeing. That was Pat Meyer's job.
Did you find any problems? Did you find problems frequently or infrequently?
I found a lot of problems. There was a unit that had a damaged board on it, and I couldn't believe that they would let anything like that go out the door.
What was wrong with it?
It was burnt about the size of a 50-cent piece on about a 2.5 to 3-inch board.
They closed it up and sealed it?
Yes, and shipped it that day.
So it somewhere today could be in a cruise guidance system?
Yes, it could.
That kind of damaged circuit board could eventually cause the entire unit to fail. Pat Meyer says she wrote discrepancy or squawk reports on these problems. But in the rush to get the units out the door, the plant manager or the chief engineer would often override her reports of substandard parts by just noting, use as is. These initials, CG, overriding her report, belong to none other than the plant manager, Clarence Gonzalez.
Committee will come to order.
Later, a Northrop vice president claimed to Congress the company had no idea what was going on.
Ms. Flinch, why was it that the people at the Pomona plant didn't go to the manager with the complaints on these matters?
Well, unfortunately, sir, the manager of the plant was involved in the decisions to falsify or alter or not perform the test. So this was being done under not with the knowledge of and the direction of the manager.
He's talking about the manager, Gonzalez. He put this woman, Cheryl Hannon, in charge of quality assurance. She was a low-level technician in the plant, but was quickly promoted by Gonzalez to a top post. Gonzalez, Hannon, Chief Engineer Howard Hyde, and 2 other employees were indicted in April for knowingly falsifying tests and providing the government with flight data transmitters that might not work. Also named in the criminal indictment, the Northrop Corporation itself. The 2 employees who blew the whistle on all these problems say they reported them to Northrop management over 4 years ago and nothing changed. In fact, Leo Barajas and Pat Meyer say they were fired because of their efforts to clean things up. Northrop said Pat Meyer took too much time off, and Leo was fired for his role in falsifying tests. They got a lawyer and are suing Northrop.
Now, basically what you're talking about is the temperature chambers.
Their attorney, Herbert Half, conducted his own investigation. He says that because the whistleblower's reports were ignored, the Air Force has found substandard flight data transmitters in air-launched cruise missiles today.
When the Air Force took them apart, and they're lying if they say different. Our sources are better than anybody's sources. They're lying if they say different. When they took them apart, they found the quality of workmanship exactly as we alleged. It was sloppy. And they can't guarantee these things will work. They won't.
Attorney Half and his team of detectives found another problem, the 3rd so far, one that's been neglected by other investigators. There was another source of shoddy workmanship, a plant run by a subcontractor known as Fuzzy for his long hair. Fuzzy had a contract from Northrop to assemble circuit boards that went into the flight data transmitter. His plant, located on an alley, was known to Northrop employees as Fuzzy's Garage. Circuit boards are the nerve center of the FDT and have to be carefully wired by hand to exact specifications. Florence Castaneda remembers trying to repair Fuzzy's circuit boards.
They were flawed. Circuitry used to lift up. And when they had to change a part, the circuitry used to break off.
Were these bad parts that came in from Fuzzy's Garage thrown in the trash can, or did they go into the cruise missile?
They went into the cruise missile.
These inspection documents show the parts did end up in the cruise missile. The real name of Fuzzy's company was Quality Assurance Manufacturing. The company was sent Northrop parts and instructions to assemble them by the book.
Arrows.
Pat Meyer also saw problems with fuzzy circuit boards.
Everything from reverse parts to solder shorts to lifted pads to damaged parts to reverse parts to everything.
So this was shoddy workmanship.
Oh, very.
We wanted to see this Fuzzy's garage, and we found it. Located on a back alleyway in North Hollywood, California, amid the dumpsters and auto body repair shops. But when we got here, Fuzzy had moved out. The missile makers had been replaced by a team manufacturing something more down to earth. This is what we found: rock musicians. When the band Triangle moved in, Fuzzy was gone. But he had left some interesting things behind. Transformers, connectors, special high-tech electrical wire scattered all over the shop. We found records showing they were Northrop property. Official government inspection stickers required for use in military products were found lying all around. The boys in the band threw out most of their electronic discoveries while house cleaning, but not all of it. They wired some of the abandoned parts into their amplifiers. Components which could have been destined for use in a cruise missile today are pounding out a hot rock and roll beat. Fuzzy's garage, also known as Quality Assurance Manufacturing, was set up by Fuzzy, whose real name is Charles George, and Northrop employee Jean Porter. Jean Porter told us she gave approval for her own company to be a Northrop subcontractor, a clear conflict of interest. She, in effect, hired herself. We tracked Fuzzy, Mr. Charles George, to his new company, and at first got a runaround.
Is Mr. George in, please?
No, he's not.
We wanted to ask George about the way Quality Assurance Manufacturing had gotten its contract with Northrop, and about charges he had provided them with substandard parts for the cruise missile. But he promptly showed us the door.
Thank you very much.
You understand what we're trying to find out?
I sure do. Thank you very
much. The Northrop work you did.
Yes.
Can you talk to us at all about it?
No, thank you very
Nothing at all. Okay.
Dr. Robert Costello is the former weapons procurement chief at the Pentagon.
When you hear about a system that has been penetrated by something like Fuzzy's garage, what do you think?
You could seriously degrade the system. It costs you lots by the time you're done.
In what way?
Because you're not aware of the reliability. And you may have a part that's defective.
When we told the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee about Fuzzy's garage, he said that's not an acceptable way to make a missile.
If you are producing these products under any conditions other than the most extremely well-organized conditions, I mean, you end up with something that you don't know where that missile is going to go when you fire it.
And for the problem-laden cruise missile guidance system, there's one final outrage. In severely cold temperatures, the flight data transmitters may not work at all. Because of their strategic importance, the air-launched cruise missiles must work even when launched under extreme conditions that could average 65 degrees below zero. But Northrop had used the wrong liquid in the FDT gyros by mistake. In extreme cold, the gyros may ice up, freeze, and be useless. But because of the fraudulent testing, workers in the Pomona plant never caught this error. 2 years ago, Congressman Les Aspin ordered a congressional investigation into the whole problem of FDT testing. That prompted this Air Force response to Aspin, reporting on a sample inspection of 31 FDTs. 7 failed inspection. That's over 20%. But the Air Force claimed none of the 7 deficiencies would have prevented mission accomplishment.
Do you believe that?
I
Do they expect you to believe that?
I don't know whether they expect us to believe it or not, but it's just not credible.
But for now, the Air Force admits all flight data transmitters in air-launched cruise missiles have to be considered suspect. So the apparent cheating by a few people working on just one missile guidance part has spread like a virus into missiles positioned throughout the entire air-launched cruise program.
The worst part is you don't know. If you knew that these didn't work and these worked, at least you'd know what you had. The problem with this system is you don't know, and that is very unnerving.
Yeah. Tom, what are we looking at here? massive incompetence or venality beyond our wildest imagining?
Hugh, it appears to be less a matter of personal greed as a motive, rather than people working under enormous pressures to meet a deadline and compromising a lot. But still, on a missile system this important to our national defense, with the amount of money that went into the cruise missile, it's inexcusable.
Right. What do you think is the future of the cruise missile?
Major, in that a couple of other major nuclear delivery systems, the stealth and the advanced cruise, are being cut by Congress as far as funding is concerned. We're going to have to depend on this missile. We should point out, too, Northrop and the Air Force declined to talk to us because of criminal trials which are pending.
Right. Thank you, Tom.